We're watching right now is the Battle of the Year competition that happens every year, either in Germany or France. And Koreans, the South Koreans win about 85% of the time. Usually because there's two ways to get a military. You're in South Korea, you're a boy, you turn the age of 17, and they go, okay, you're 17, pick up a rifle, go to the border, and watch over what North Korea is doing. There's no deferment. There's no, like, you can't be a dad or a teacher or a baseball player. There's no deferment, except for being really, 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 really good at StarCraft or being really, really, really good at breakdancing. Those are the two things that can get you a deferment into the South Korean army. And they were trying to figure out, like, why is this a law? Like, why these specific things? And they never found an answer. But what they did figure out was that there were some sons of, like, high-powered Korean senators who were really, really good at StarCraft and breakdancing. So an odd coincidence. An odd coincidence. But the culture of breakdancing in Korea is still massive and amazing. There's a documentary. Yeah, come on in. There's a whole bunch of chairs up there, so file in wherever you like. Let's make this room hotter. There's a documentary from, I believe, 2006 called Planet B-Boy. And it's great because they follow around, like, a couple of different crews that are all competing in this Battle of the Year. By the way, there's a movie called Battle of the Year. Do not watch that movie. Chris Brown is in it, so I don't need to say anymore. So there was a documentary, and they were following around a couple crews that were competing, including, like, the Koreans and the French team had, like, a whole bunch of super duper massive guys. And then, I don't know if he was a child or just, like, a small person, but they just had a small person. And so the French team's deal is what they would do is they would have the big guys. Yeah, come on in. We got a whole bunch of chairs. Go for it. The French team would basically, like, pick up the little person and just chuck him around the room for 9 minutes. So much fun. Anyway, but in that Planet B-Boy movie, which is super fun, they have the Americans, and the Americans lose in the first round. It's embarrassing every single time, just annihilated. And so Americans compete and are immediately out, and they're whining, and they start whining to the camera. And one of the Americans goes, God, I'm so sick of South Korea winning this competition every single year just because they do really amazing shit all the time. Dude, yeah, unfair. You got this specific is France on the left, Korea on the right. But I got, at the 6 o'clock mark, one more little thing I want to show you of actually American breakdancing. And not me. Like, no. If you're thinking, like, I would like to see that, I have one move. I'm not even going to do that. It's not good. Breakdancing and Battle of the Year, almost more specifically, has been my obsession for many years. What you're watching here is just sort of the background of the slide. It's just a YouTube video. There's plenty of it out there. If you just, you search Battle of the Year and then your own country, as long as your own country isn't America, you're probably going to be seeing something really, really good. I would highly recommend, if you want to come up to me, I've got some very specific recommendations of different breakdancing like crews that I've really loved. Phase T is the French team I was talking about that threw the little person around. Also very good. But I wanted to show you one more little thing. Would you like to see a child get just destroyed by another child? Yes. Oh my God, I was hoping you would say that. That one's not it. This is the one. So this is B-Girl Tara. This is B-Girl Tara, and B-Girl Tara, I believe is from Brussels, if I'm not mistaken. She is at the age of this video. She is 6 years old, and what you're going to see when I start this video is not B-Girl Tara. You're going to see somebody that gets to watch B-Girl Tara kill. And to be clear, I believe this kid's like 11 or. Yeah, I'm not really sure how old this kid is, but like super soft. Like a great breakdancer. Like nothing about this performance is to be embarrassed about. But there's B-Girl Tara. Oh, God. Dude. Oh. Don't sweat the technique. So then this kid comes out and she's like, hang on. I'm not done killing you yet. You're not quite dead yet. Let me put this final nail in the coffin and do this. And we'll just see we'll see who the judges go for at this particular point. And he's like, yep. I know what happened. Somebody won, twernt me. B-Girl Tara, so good. Still dancing. You can still find videos of her as well. Really amazing performer. But we're gonna segue into, I guess, like websites or something. Yeah, probably. Let's probably smoothly transition into the concept of a website. So, hey, I'm looking around, and I don't remember the last time that I've been giving a talk when there is actually beers in hand. So that's super exciting, and I'm very happy for you in this particular regard. And so let's see what this does. So, hi. Oh, that was good, Copenhagen. I really liked that. I've never been to Denmark before. I definitely did that exact line in Stockholm and went, hi. And they went, I acknowledge that you were on the stage. Yes, you were on the stage. Well done. So, fantastic. So, my name's Lemon, and I make websites. I've been making websites for quite a long time, over 2 decades. Some of them have been pretty fun. Some of them have been for work and, less fun. If you go to my website, in case you just want to pull out your phone because, you just want to not be an active participant, ahoylemon.xyz, there is a whole bunch of dumb games. I made a game out of WikiHow. I made a new game recently that actually has prizes at the end of it, and it is a gaslighting simulator. So what it is it needs to prove whether or not you are sane. It's going to prove whether or not you are sane, and at the end, you will be diagnosed as either sane or insane at the end of the test. And if you are in fact sane, you will get one of these stickers. However, The site very intentionally is going to try to make you feel insane and uncomfortable. And if you do that, want a sticker from that, just come up and talk to me at any point or email me. But yeah, so I've been making websites for a very long time, and I still find it fun. Like, even though it is my job, and even though it continues to be my job, and even though it's something that I've been mentoring people in, it's still fun to me because the thing that I really still am just infatuated with in the internet. There are seats over here if you're interested. If you want to stand, that's awesome. But just mentioning there are chairs. But one of the things that I still love about the internet is the fact that you can just do it. You can just do it. Like, if you've seen some of the sites, and I know a couple of folks over here have seen some of the sites that I've made, some of them are extremely dumb. Some of them are extremely dumb. I made a website called party.party, which is just a button that says party every time you push the party button, and then it counts. And that's a dumb idea, and no software company in the world, I mean, you can talk about dumb VC money. No VC in the world is going to be like, yeah, that's $1 million, but I can just make it. I can make it in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, put the thing on GitHub Pages, and if it gets traffic, great. If it doesn't, I don't care. It's on GitHub Pages. That's Damo's problem, not mine. So I love the internet, and I love making websites. And currently, I work at a company called Savas Labs. You've never heard of them? That's okay. Fairly small agency in Raleigh, North Carolina, and fairly traditional agency environment. Hello, we would like to pay you money to make a software thing. Awesome. The only difference is that Savas specifically, we do our work so that 50% of our billable hours are supposed to be for good, so projects for good. So, sexual abuse, climate change, anything that we can sort of describe as like bettering something or other is the differentiator with Savas Labs. I just got a new title on Monday before I left, and I am now the front-end development director. Thanks. Thanks. It was really not a moment because the bosses called me in and they were like, "Hey, would you like to do the same job you've been doing but with a different title and more money?" Yeah, I would. So as a front-end development director, we have a lot of cross-disciplinary work that comes through all the time, and so I am responsible for the front-end code, and to a certain extent, the people who make that front-end code. So that means that my job is mentoring, shepherding, and documenting. I'm going to be trying to build the larger pieces and then help the folks that I'm working with write that code themselves and grow and get better and, get their own raises. And that means that I am a serious professional. So that's me in my friend's living room playing a game called Shooty Fruity while in my pajama pants. Shooty Fruity is a game where you work a checkout register, and then you also have to shoot things as you're working at the checkout register. That was the same day that I got a actual honest to God Vive injury. I got a Vive injury because I was playing this game and I was like working at like a checkout register, and then I wanted to like jump over a guy, and so literally like I was this dumb that in the VR space I went crash. So anyway, this is the inaugural Copenhagen Developers Conference, and that means that this is an exciting thing filled with music, and today I want to be talking about performance. By which I mean website performance. And this might strike you as a little bit of a dry subject, and sometimes this can be a little bit of a dry subject, but I promise you that we're going to do our very best to make the topic of website performance feel fun and feel engaging and feel empowering in a way that you can actually make changes right now. Not now, because like you're gonna watch this talk and then like have beer, so like actually writing code on beer is fine, but like, at some point you're going to be making some website performance increases. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about what's the problem with website performance in general, what's the problem with the trend line of how websites have been delivering bits over the wire, and also why should I care? I'm trying and I'm just filling out my time card, and like, why should I care about these specific things? And then if I do want to care, if I do choose to care, then like, what should I do about it? And there are things, like I said, that we can be doing about this in the very, very near future. And then of course, how can I be happy? But like with my website. Like I'm not coming up here being like, oh, maybe think positive thoughts and then good things will happen to. I'm not that guy. And I don't trust that guy. But anyway, we're going to get started and we're going to play a game. Let's play a game. And that game is going to be this one right here. I'm sure we're all familiar, but go ahead and shout it out. That is correct. This is the video game Doom. A couple facts about the video game Doom. It was first released by id Software in 1993, a very small team of a couple of developers in Texas. Made this game in the course of not a whole lot of time. Very short amount of time that they cranked this game out. And it was played by 20 million people in 2 years. And in the scope of people actually buying video games at that point, 20 million was a very, very, very big number. It still is, but it was bigger then. This popularized the first-person shooter genre. There were, of course, other first-person shooters that happened before this, including like Wolfenstein 3D, also made by id. But Doom was the one that really solidified the format that people have still been playing. Like FPSs still borrow some of these ideas, and then in the case of like all the like Steam sort of shovelware crap are just literally just doing this thing again because like whatever. The sequels continue to this day. There's Doom Eternal. I'm sure there'll be more because Bethesda really likes money a lot, and it was built with its own custom game engine. They built an engine for Doom as they did for Quake, as they did for Wolfenstein. They built their whole engine so that they could push the pixels as fast as they could to people to get things to look nice and gory and cool. And that whole package was 2.39 megabytes. And the reason for that was that they actually had to care about a disk, right? You needed to do this thing. For example, they were on the shareware model, so they wanted to give the beginning of it for free, and they wanted people to be able to distribute this thing around. They weren't going to be waiting for, you know, like a Steam download or, God forbid, a torrent. They needed to get this thing fitting properly on a 3.5-inch disk. So having looked at Doom, let's now look at another very, very exciting and engaging product. We're going to look at this exciting and engaging product, and it is called Unfold. It is a WordPress theme. Look at that tiny little bit of parallax. That makes me want to engage. Cool, so Unfold here, it already crashed. Hang on, it has to restart. Okay, it's going to restart now. It crashed, but we're reloading this thing. I've still got this parallax. It is called Unfold 5.0. It used to be called Unfold 2017, but now it's called 5.0, except for right there. It's actually still called Unfold 2017 right there. But like, look, you can scroll down and you can see these little like tool tips. That's pretty cool. I've got these non-accessibility flyout menus that overlap each other. I really like that whole thing. We can go through all of these features. There's so many features. I got these hover effects. These are definitely not stock photos. Here is just a guy really engaged looking at Unfold 2017. It's easy to use for young and old. What a great theme. There are so many features. So many features like translations, which apparently is just going to happen automatically. I got more tool tips here I'm going to go into. I've got a form, and like, what would a website be without a carousel? We all know that carousels have been performing badly since the beginning of time, but like, let's still do it. Here's what our customers say. It seems to be some really innovative things that they're saying, and then real support by real people. There's the real people right there, definitely real actual people. And my favorite feature in a website is this button right here. This button right here, because when I get to the bottom of a web page, I go like, I'm at the bottom of a web page. What do I do now? Somebody help me with this. Unfold figured that shit out, so congratulations. So let's do a little audit of Unfold, not 2017, 5.0. Okay, this was $59 on ThemeForest, and plenty of people thought that was a worthwhile bargain. So 250,000 people, according to ThemeForest, have bought this for their WordPress sites. It's got parallax, which is the most exciting thing in the entire world. It's going to load up 35 images. Of course, some of them are giant pings. We've got 4 fonts. We've got 12 different JavaScript files, not including the tracking files that happen on top of that, 8 CSS files, and then that's going to give you a nice payload of 1,333 words. I'm talking just about the home page. I'm not talking about any other thing. I'm talking about just what you're seeing right here is this amount of data, which is in my tests, has been over 15 seconds on a 3G connection. And I'm saying over because, you know, 3G is not a super duper consistent speed. So as I've tested this thing over and over again, what I've never had it done is have it loaded in less than 15 seconds. Frequently, it's loaded in more than 15 seconds. And that's because that package was 4.72 megabytes for that homepage, which means that is 197% bigger than the video game Doom. And so, like, is Unfold 5.0, 197% better than the video game Doom. I mean, clearly, the market bears this out, right? This thing that I'm bringing to you is I have to confess, I put this in the syllabus, and it is not my initial idea. This was actually taken from a blog post that I read several years ago. I actually wrote it in Wired magazine. It was an article by Clint Finley, and he said the average web page is now the size of the original Doom. And it's, summarizing some of the same things that I said. He said the average web page is now the size of the original Doom. And then when this article ended up getting sort of published and talked about and shared, people kind of took it and kept running with it. They kept running with it, and they realized that actually that title is not super duper true, because the average web page at this point, and this was, I believe, in 2016, they said the average web page is now larger than Doom, which is true. In 2016, the average web page, by which I'm talking about like, the top 2 million index.html homepages are actually larger than the video game Doom. So that story kept getting shared around, and that story kept kind of getting, in the way that internet media works, where they just kind of like share the same headlines and go for clicks. Kept going around until it got to this thing is geek.com. Geek.com said the average web page is now larger than the original Doom. When I read that headline, after I have read the other ones, the first thing I thought was, how come this page runs like shit? Like, how come this page that I'm looking at here runs so terribly? Well, I got this thing up in Chrome. So let's just go ahead and open up DevTools and do a little like network inspector, right? So we're going to do a little dev inspector, and here we go. Okay, we're at 4.5.6.9, 10, 11 megabytes. We keep loading files. We are up to 350, 60, 40, 100 requests, 500 requests, 20 megabytes. The average web page, shame on you, says geek.com. The average web page larger than the original Doom. We're still counting. We're at 26.5. We seem to be done. It seems to, nope, it's not over yet. We're still going to keep loading a couple more scripts. And that is the state of the internet. That thing, I don't remember when this GIF actually ends. 27. 27 is where we actually ended here. And that state is super duper common. This research keeps getting done. This is a study by HTTP Archive doing the same sort of metric to say, like, we looked at these top X amount of top performing or most hit pages, and let's just see what their actual payload is. And in 2010, we are half a megabyte, right? And then this trend line continues to go up. As much as people have said, hey, your files seem to be too big, clearly nobody's doing anything unless they were like halfway through 2018 and they were like, maybe we'll, nah, whatever. I found a new React model. Let's put that shit out there. So this trend line obviously is going in one direction, and like you're thinking about this, but you're also thinking about like, okay, well, 2010, I mean, that was a while ago, and like things have changed, right? So like, do we have to be exactly as concerned about this? And like, what about Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law, of course, named after Julianne Moore from The Big Lebowski, in case I'm wrong about that somehow. But yeah, Moore's Law was a thing that, computers every 2 years are going to get, and that's no longer true, first of all. Sorry, it was every 2 years computers double in speed. And that's no longer true, first of all, but obviously it doesn't apply to bandwidth. And one of the reasons why it doesn't apply to bandwidth is that this is sort of beholden on the goodwill and kindness of internet service providers. Do you all like your internet service provider? Big fans? Big fans? Yeah? Like them? Like paying their bills? Like them? So this has gotten faster. Obviously, network speeds have gotten faster over time, but not in a global way, right? So in 2015, this is sort of what this looks like, the source of fast metrics, and we can see that we've got pretty wide divide of from basically 1 megabyte to 26.7 megabytes, 2015, and then as we go to 2013, we can see the colors change. So like, that's different, right? But we can see that like while we do in the sort of Scandinavian sort of thing are looking pretty good here over in America, not too bad. Like the actual dispersion of what bandwidth speeds look like is significantly different from country to country, and I mean significantly different. So another piece of data that I found here, something by Ookla, and they do this every single year of just testing mean? median, I believe, bandwidth connections for every country that they can find. So, Singapore there with 247 megabytes per second or megabits per second. Wow. I mean, wow. Like, you're playing a lot of StarCraft. That's awesome. Hong Kong, obviously, it also very high up there. US, we're up at 6 now. We've jumped quite a bit recently. But Denmark, very, very good, right? Very, very good. 192.68 megabits per second, which is super solid. But like, you don't have to go that much further down into Finland, right? Where now we're at less than half of that speed. We go a little bit further down into Croatia, and we're now at like a third of the half of that speed. And this keeps getting worse. And obviously, like, poor Cuba. I mean, I don't know how that's called a broadband connection at that particular point. But that's just broadband, right? Things look different in mobile. United Arab Emirates actually is the fastest global internet speed. Norway, again, doing great up there. That is a very, very fast mobile speed in Norway, and there's Denmark, and like, I mean, that's awesome, but like, I've been trying to get around the last couple days on Google Maps, like, I'm not getting there. This is definitely not what my connection has been looking like. But there is one more thing you have to think about, specifically in the concept of mobile, right? Is that if you try to simplify it down, you've got the idea that like a website is basically about half, like the average website is going to be about half mobile, half computer, is sort of the fuzzy math that you can kind of like put in a lot of stuff. And with that is an actual cost. When I put bytes down the wire and onto your phone, I know that I'm actually charging you. At some point, I am charging you for those bytes that you are absorbing. And those costs can look super duper different. Obviously, Israel, I mean, that's very, very cheap. But like, as we look at the cost of a single gigabit transfer, and this is amalgamated data, which means that, like, yes, of course, some people are not on metered connections, but they had to average out the idea of metered connections versus people at unmetered connections, and look at what that looks like. And when we get into the United States, I mean, that's $3.50. That's $3.50 for a gigabyte. And then, of course, Norway and the Falkland Islands, I mean, it gets pretty insane. And there's another thought there. There's another thought, which is that if you're thinking about connections, and you're thinking about like real nice, speedy things, you also have to remember that like lots and lots of people live in rural communities, or communities where, for whatever reason, the antennas aren't there. The mobile bandwidth is bad. And there's another cost. There's another cost that exists, and that cost is in time. The idea of me downloading your 3 megabyte file in 2 seconds, I mean, cool, I already did it. There's the 3G plus. I'm pretty good there. And eventually I'm going to wait for that 10 seconds I get. But like that 2G connection, which is not an insane concept. Like, not a lot of people at this point are rocking 2G connections, but it does totally happen. And the idea of 3 megabytes being waited for 2 minutes, we won't get there. We're not going to get to that part of the slide. We're going to go to this slide instead. This slide is a concept of bounce rates. Are you familiar? Can you raise your hand if you're familiar with the concept of bounce rates? Okay, looks like maybe about a third of folks. So this is measured differently in different companies. Google is going to measure that different than Akamai or whatever. But essentially what they're doing is they're taking all the data and they're saying, as best as we can figure, somebody typed in your website, www.whatever, and they went, never mind. Like they went to it and they went, for whatever reason, I'm out. Like maybe the actual design was shitty. That's definitely an option. But maybe it just didn't load. And so this was a piece of research by Pingdom, and what they did was they basically took like-for-like data. They took like-for-like data of a whole bunch of different websites, and they just measured the actual bounce rates across throttled connections. Let's take this same amount of data and let's throttle it so that it's going to take longer and longer for people to actually get this connection. Any company that would tell you we're going to get your bounce rates to 0 is filled with liars. That's insane. That's an insane claim to make. But a good bounce rate, a really, really good bounce rate, a bounce rate I would be proud of and would exuberantly tell the client about would be a bounce rate of 10%. If I can get my bounce rate at 10%, I am doing good, because that means 90% of those people are staying on the thing for a little while and engaging in that. And after we get to about 3 seconds, 4 seconds, that thing starts to climb.
That thing starts to climb to the point that once we're in our 6-second idea, half of our customers who were interested in this product, they did not bounce because of bad content. They did not have any other reason to leave, but you made them wait for 6 seconds and they went, nah, like this seemed like a good idea, but I'm not into it anymore. I mean, however much parallax you got, I don't care. And it is a real concept. It's a real concept because we all need to refresh that slide. We all experience time in a very real way. I'm so excited to be here. I've been excited to be here for a while. I've seen so many cool talks this week, and I've been hanging out with people who I really, really love and appreciate. And so I've been having fun, and I'm having fun delivering this talk. And I hope you're having some fun too, or finding it amusing or interesting or whatever. But you know that that time is based on how much you're enjoying it. And you know that that time is not a one-for-one measure. If that time is worth it, then that's cool. But if that time is not worth it, then you're just thinking about the very fact that this time is finite. Okay, so that's a lot. That's a lot. Nobody expected to walk across into this room and get some sort of web performance talk, and then like some jerk starts talking about death. You didn't ask for that. I threw that at you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna back away because there's improvements we can make here. We can make these improvements because we are clever people. We're clever people who can improve on other people's experiences and make life seem a little bit less dire. So this is a talk about easy wins. I want to talk about easy wins, and that means I don't want to talk about zealotry, and I want to talk about minimal sacrifices. Yes, of course, if you're a client and you come to me and you have an unlimited budget and you go, what should I do? I'd say, burn down your website and pay me to make a new one. 100% of the time I will say that to you. But in fact, that's not the real world that a whole lot of people are operating in. They want to make incremental improvements, and you want to be making incremental improvements in your web pages, as you should. And also, like, no zealotry. Like the idea of when I meet like other technologists, like having found out recently about like Astro, and I was like, oh, that's super cool, you know, like talking to people that were super stoked about Astro. And I was like, that's neat. And when technologists are like, oh man, I did this thing and it's super fun and that's cool. I love that. What I genuinely hate is when somebody goes, well, I found it. Like I found the right way. Like everybody until now has been doing websites wrong and I figured it out. That's not what I want to bring you. So we're going to start with the easy stuff, and we're going to look at this little pie chart here. Now, I've sourced other things. This is a thumbnail sketch, right? Like, please don't super duper fact check this, but like if you kind of like amortize a couple of different websites, you're going to kind of see this sort of breakdown, right? There's like a little bit of HTML, you got some more sort of like CSS and fonts that's going to be some sort of load, but obviously JavaScript is going to be the bigger load. But if you're looking at that and you're going like, well, that's a page, like what are my actual, wait, is that really what a page looks like? Well, no, because there's one more slice there. Images. If you're going to make incremental improvements, and you're going to make incremental improvements in literally only one thing, that one thing can be images. You can make really, really big improvements just by doing some image compression. So how do you do that? Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. One of them is in Photoshop, a program that I'm assuming a fair amount of you are familiar with, a program that was so successful that they were able to buy Figma for the tune of $2.3 billion? Damn. So if you are in Photoshop, if you end up as part of, if you are in a sort of front-end role where you're dealing with images, there is ways to do this in Photoshop. And I want to bring a picture of somebody that I just super duper idolize and respect and admire, and that is Bjork. It's Bjork because, I mean, as far as like actual artists, like, I'm not saying I like every Bjork album. I sure don't, but none of that shit was half-assed. So this is a photo of Bjork, and I want to improve this photo of Bjork. I want to take this image that I got from, I don't know, wherever, and I want to make this thing smaller. So does anyone have a guess on where I would actually go to make this file smaller? Exports? That's not a bad guess. Problem is that Photoshop has so much legacy that they can't actually change what things did. So if they had something that was able to export as a Macromedia flash file, well, no, that's what that does until the end of time. And so now what you have to do is you go export and then you go save for web legacy. That is the actual interface, and we can see that interface inside of the interface itself because I'm really very clever. And we're going to just kind of look at what that looks like. So we're going to take this little GIF. Okay, so we've got this image, and we're going to go export. We're going to go save for web legacy. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start playing with some settings, right? So my file that I got here somewhere on the internet was 2.349 megabytes. It's very big. That's very big and not a whole lot of pixels for those megabytes. So let's see what we can do here. So we can kind of like figure out, let's calculate this against whatever sort of like bandwidth rate that we might want to target. What do we think our users are actually going to be at? And then let's take here and we got our JPEG maximum. Let's just turn it down and let's go to like high, right? That's going to like set a little thing. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to ruin the quality. We don't want to make Bjork anything but beautiful because she should be beautiful. We want her to look as good as possible with as few bits as possible. So what we can do is we kind of like look around and just sort of like try to find like weird artifacts. We're already at 240K, so like we're making some very real improvements, but we can do like a side-by-side split screen, right? To look at the input and output size, because what we're not trying to do is we're not trying to denigrate quality. We're just trying to push out something with few pixels and the same amount of quality. That is our goal. So maybe we need to put that at like 1600 because in my imaginary world, we're actually in a container that's 1600 across. Now we're at 218K. If I look at this, I mean, if you're back there, you might not be able to like match pixel per pixel, but like that's looking pretty good. Like this is something that I'm personally happy with. It had to take me, whatever that was, maybe a minute or so. I just put that in my folder with all my other Bjork photos and I'm good to go. So having done, in my estimation, or in my sort of like eyes, no actual loss in image quality, I took this 2.34 megabyte file and I made that 219 kilobytes. That's 91% smaller. If you're going to minify JavaScript, you're going to minify CSS, you're going to bundle, you're going to do whatever, that's great, that's great. You're totally going to make incremental improvements, 14% improvements. These are the real massive improvements here. This is Jake Archibald. Jake Archibald, until very, very recently, worked at Google. And maybe if you don't exactly have Photoshop and you want to do this, but without that sort of software, you might want something else. And so Jake Archibald made this thing called Squoosh. Squoosh is a progressive web app built-in WebAssembly. And it's super duper cool. I always get my coworkers to start using this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go in here and I'm going to go into my drive and I'm going to pull out my photo of Bjork. There we go. So here's my photo of Bjork. And we're going to look at this thing side by side. Now we can see that this one I remember was from Pitchfork. They had a hero image. Which was clearly probably much bigger than it needed to be, but clocking in at 4.74 megabytes. So like pretty big, right? So we can kind of go into here and we can just start tweaking. Now, having done nothing and having said, I don't know, Squoosh, what do you think? It went, well, here's probably what you could do, and it cut this thing down 76% to a 1.14 megabyte file. So at this point, I can kind of go through and start to toy with settings, right? I can turn my quality up, maybe if I don't think that the fidelity is quite as good, or I can turn my quality down if I think that the fidelity can use some spare. I mean, we've got the idea of like all of these like pointers and the idea of like hair and grass are one of those things that JPEGs have some problems with. So we might need a kind of higher quality setting, but like what if we go all the way down here? I mean, that's like cool. Like I don't dislike this image, but I don't think that's really necessarily what we want to go for. So we're going to kind of go back around and like, I feel like usually in these sort of situations, like a 70 is super duper safe. Super duper duper safe. You can get to a 60 probably a lot of the time without any sort of like image degradation. But obviously we can go ahead and like resize this thing down if we want to, because like that thing is clocking in at a healthy 3900 pixels across. I don't know if we necessarily need all of that. We can kind of scale that thing down. And of course, we can choose our image types. There's a whole bunch of options here for the MozJPEG, and then OptiPing, and then WebP. I'm going to go into WebP in just a moment here. But we can sort of like choose our setting. And again, having sort of played around here live, we took a 4.74 megabyte file and we brought that thing down to, 400K. I think we could probably shave a little bit more if we wanted to, but that's not too bad. Like, I'm not mad at that. So that's cool, but like if you're dealing with something where like you've got like a big old hero image, it's your image that's like your brand standard or whatever, then like maybe you do want to spend a couple minutes kind of tweaking that and trying to improve that sort of performance. But like maybe it's catalog and now you got like a whole bunch of images and like, Lemon, I'm not going to do that stuff. And like, yeah, no, cool, neither am I. So we're going to look at a different tool here, and that tool. There we go. So that tool, made by Dan, and that is called ImageBot. And ImageBot is just a little GitHub sort of app that you can add to your project. And among your other collaborators that you might have on a project, you're also going to add as a collaborator this ImageBot. And then you're just going to go ahead and just write code. You're just going to commit your files to the actual repo and go about your life. And then when you start to do commits that actually have images into there, ImageBot will actually come through and go beep boop, your images are optimized. You save 5%. You save 5%, but more importantly, you didn't do anything. You didn't have to do anything. So like, thanks ImageBot. I loved not having to do anything. It will never get to the amount of compression that you're going, or the amount of file optimization you're going to get to with something like Squoosh, because at that point you're actually like using your eyes to determine like that looks fine, whereas this is actually doing like a pixel to pixel match. It needs to match pixel to pixel in order to pass because it doesn't want to accidentally degradate your things. It's a robot. So it's never going to get to the sort of compression that you get otherwise. But again, you don't actually have to do everything. So I haven't talked about a couple of these different kind of image types here. Anyone know the difference between JPEG, PNG, and GIF? Anyone? Go ahead and volunteer. Yes, absolutely. What's the difference between JPEG, PNG, and GIF? Yes, lossy, and which one's lossy and which one's lossless? Not exactly, no. JPEG is actually lossy, meaning that it can get fuzzy, it can get whatever. PNG and GIF are both lossless. So that is a very big contrasting factor between thinking about what sort of file I want to do. If you're going to take a screenshot, especially in like Windows, actually Mac OS does this too. It's going to do it as a PNG because it wants like actual lossless image rendering. But if you've got like a photo of something that you want to be able to scale up and down, JPEG is going to do that a lot better. The table there is that a JPEG is going to be lossy, and essentially if you've got a rectangle, especially if it's a photo, JPEG is very frequently the right answer, except for the one we'll get to in just a sec. PNG is lossless, meaning like those pixels will never blur out. It's good for drawings and screenshots. When you have things with transparent backgrounds, a lot of times you are going to need a PNG. Asterisk, there's other ways around it, but that's a whole other talk. But a PNG is going to be something where you have a transparent background. And a SVG is 4 vectors. And please, if you can, please use SVGs for logos. Please don't make me be the person that has to come back and say, I asked for your logo, you sent me a JPEG. No, you don't want me to do that. You don't want me to do that. If you can use SVG for any logo, it's going to be significantly better because it's scalable vector graphics, which means that it's all sort of isolated by the idea of lines and points and graphs and stuff like that, which means it's infinitely scalable. Any sort of like, the noun project or icon monster or font awesome or anything like that, those are all based on SVGs, meaning that they're little files that are drawn by math of lines, which means that they're as complex as they are, but they can go to any dimensions without any sort of loss of quality. The one that I left out here, though, is GIF, and GIF is actually used for nothing. It's 2023, and in fact, GIFs are used for nothing at this particular point. GIF is an outmoded concept that has no reason to exist. And you're thinking, well, wait, hang on. I've seen GIFs on the internet. I've seen GIFs on the internet. In fact, I tweeted this slide because an MP4 is actually anything that you think is a GIF. I tweeted the slide at one point, and I said, hey, here's this clever thing that I wrote about GIFs don't exist. And this was a long time ago, Twitter. But I tweeted out this slide, and somebody responded pretty quickly and said, I love that that image is a GIF. I said, thank you so very much for taking my bait. You actually followed into my trap. When you see something that is marked as a GIF on Twitter, I mean, it's been a little while for me at this point, but like when you see something with a little GIF as in the corner, that is never actually a GIF. That is a looping MP4. It's marked as a GIF because people colloquially understand that that's what a GIF is, but it's not what a GIF is. Giphy, the thing that makes your Slack less shit, is rarely, let's go with never. Giphy is actually never dealing with GIFs. It is dealing with looping MP4s, which are going to go over the wire a whole bunch better and not be limited to a 256 color palette. The Ministry of GIFs, which is an actual thing that exists. You can look it up. It actually was started by somebody at Slack. The Ministry of GIFs, in fact, does not traffic in GIFs. They only traffic in looping MP4s. Now, with all that said, I would like you to spend a moment and just consider the concept of WebP. This was something that took a little while to take off. I feel like it might have been because it was a Google spec, and so other companies that were not Google said, yeah, thanks. But there's a whole lot of benefits here to WebP. So this is for rosters, so SVGs, still SVGs are SVGs. But it's a raster graphics format which actually can be a replacement both for JPEG and for PNG, which means that it can be either lossy or lossless. That makes automatic compression a little bit difficult because you have to say, if I have an input and an output WebP, I have to say, I want you to be lossy or lossless in your output, but we can get there. It actually can support animation too, but it can support animation without a lot of the limitations that GIF had, specifically the 256 colors, to make those sacrifices. It can also support alpha transparency. So if you've got you want to knock out the background of an image, you can do that thing as a WebP, and you are all set. And you're going to be at a smaller file size so often. You're going to be at a smaller file size so often. Transitioning over to that is sometimes a little bit complicated, especially if you've been doing this for a while and you just like save JPEGs just kind of like instinctively. But if you want to take a moment and just see if there's some benefits that can be afforded by WebP, I bet there can be. But email doesn't follow any rules. So if you're doing something with an email, man, I mean, Godspeed, dude. Like, I've definitely been in that build too, and like, you know, we're just gonna write some tables. We're gonna write some other tables, and we're gonna write some other tables. I'm gonna do some inline styles, and I'm gonna write the word important a lot. I'm gonna write, oh my God, so much of this email is important. This is an important email. Email doesn't follow any of these rules. So if you need to be doing something where you have, for example, animation, buy now. Yeah, use a GIF and hope it works, because it might not even start playing because email doesn't follow any rules. Looking at the rest of these things, though, there are still improvements that we can make, right? And so if we look at that big old JavaScript pie, well, what can we do about the forms of, if we've got, like, for example, a Google font, we probably don't have the ability to compress any of that, but our HTML, our CSS, our JavaScript, what can we do about minimizing some of those? Well, the thing we can do with that is text compression for the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and we can triage this. We can triage this in three different forms. So the first thing I want to triage is the idea of server-side compression. Bundling and minifying, and then consider, I'm not saying use, I'm saying consider, CDNs, because they can be a valuable thing. So what do I mean by all those things? I'm going to start off with the server-side compression, and that's the concept of gzip. Other compression algorithms exist. There is Brotli, and also other ones, I assume. But gzip is something that basically will reduce the amount of bits that are actually going to be happening over the wire. And when I was trying to figure out why, like why does it do that? How does it do that? I was like, how does gzip work? And what I found out was how gzip works is this. So that is that helium equals a sigma. I want to say that sigma Logarithm. I bet that one means logarithm. I dropped out of high school. I don't know what any of that means. As a matter of fact, I actually watched an entire talk at JSConf by Rahul, and I still kind of don't know what it does. But I do know that I have turned it off, and I've turned it on, and I've tested the results. And what's happening is that there's just less bits over the wire. It's going to do a compression step before it sends the bits out. It's going to do a decompression step when it gets the bits, and there's going to be less bits over the wire with not any downsides that I'm familiar with. So if you can turn gzip on, if it is an option, if it's something that you don't know if it's there, a couple minutes to figure out if it's there, it is I want to say a free bonus. I hate to say stuff like that, but I feel like this is a free performance improvement that we can just get just by turning gzip on, and a whole lot of like LAMP servers, Microsoft servers, whatever you have, are going to have that. Sometimes turned on by default, plenty of times turned off by default, but if it's not, turn that thing on. Bundling and minifying is, I'm going to split that into two different things because I want to debundle. I hated that joke when I said it. So there's two things you can do here. One of those is bundling. So like, why would I actually take, my different pieces of JavaScript and bundle those into like one big site.min.js file? And the reason is an actual piece of math that I do understand. I'm not that smart, but there's a couple pieces of math that I do understand. And I know that when it comes to web terms, this is true. 100 kilobytes is actually bigger than 10 times 10 kilobytes because there's 10 different payloads that are going to be happening, and all 10 of those payloads are going to add some incremental cost to the actual output support. The last time I said that to somebody, he got very upset and he said, well, hang on, what about HTTP 2? Yes, so here's a big old footnote. Yes, that is true. Okay, if you're actually serving your JavaScript over HTTP2, then there's this concept of multiplexing. So it's going to actually multiplex your files by origin, and so your performance hit is not going to be nearly as bad as it would be on HTTP1, which, by the way, a whole lot of people are still using. But if you're already using HTTP2, it's going to be better. However, if you consider the concept of the gzip, which again is doing the compression, it has to compress those files each individually, which means that if it has 100 kilobytes, it's actually going to compress all of those because it can, uglify like a variable and use that variable over and over again. That it's going to have a harder time to do if you have a whole bunch of separated files. So if you can bundle your stuff, it is going to make a performance increase to bundle your files, your CSS and your JavaScript, to bundle those things together. And why minify? Well, okay, here's an example, and it's a project that has lost some favor, something that people have gotten away with. But like moment.js was a very, very, very popular library for a very long time. I was using it until very, very recently because I don't want to deal with time zones. They're confusing and weird and scary. And wait, you have daylight savings time and you don't, but inside of this city is a tribal land, and then they have a different rule, but inside of the tribal land, like the courthouse does. These rules all exist. So the concept of like thinking about time zones is maddening, and I don't want to. So I was using moment.js. So if I wasn't using moment.js, I was just using moment.min.js to say that like, I'm going to take this thing, which has a whole bunch of code, a whole bunch of JavaScript code, and I go, I don't know what any of that does. I don't want to use it, or I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to minify that thing down and transmit that thing over the wire. So three times smaller for the moment.min.js, and a whole lot of those libraries are going to be a similar thing. So how would you do that? If you have your JavaScript or your CSS, how would you do that? Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways, and I wouldn't pretend to tell you how to do it in your stack. What I do know is that when I'm working in lo-fi projects without a whole bunch of stuff, I try not to use the command line if possible. And so I tend to use something called preproc, which is basically it's just Grunt, but with a UI. So it just does all the stuff that Grunt would do, but I get to click on stuff. And there's icons, and I like that because I like icons, and I like clicking on things. It costs, I don't know, $25 or something. They definitely have not sponsored me. It's just a thing that I use. If you're looking for something that will do this kind of compression and serving, I do recommend also SAS. Good for that. And then finally is the concept of CDNs. And there's lots of them. You got CDN.js, you've got JS Deliver, Google hosted libraries. So many of these. Cloudflare is CDN.js. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of different CDNs that exist. And they are worth considering because if you serve something from a CDN, that server is going to probably be faster. Okay, Damo works at GitHub, so maybe that's going to be different for him. But I don't work for fancy companies, and I work for companies that are just buying whatever sort of bandwidth that we buy, and so my servers are not going to deliver that payload fast. The CDNs, I have a whole bunch of cloud computing that they can just give you. They're going to get those payloads faster than my company will ever get to you. And also, your users already have jQuery. Also, I do sometimes still write jQuery. I admit it. I admit it in a room full of developers. I admitted that shit. But your users actually already have jQuery. If you talk about the actual costs of using that jQuery, if I'm serving you the same jQuery version from the same CDN, your browser's actually already got that thing. So that thing's cached. So that is not a new call that has to be made. And I just made a performance increase of, whatever that was, 22, 25 kilobytes down to 0 because I actually don't have to make that call again. One more thing I want to introduce you to is Paul Irish, who still works at Google, and made this thing called Lighthouse. And this is something that I use very, very, very frequently. And in fact, you already have this. If you open up any Chromium browser, which at this point means anything but Firefox, you've got this thing. So here we are in Brave, and I decided that I love NDC. I love NDC. I really do. They've been so nice to me and so kind to me. But let's see how their delight does. Let's just give this a little performance check here. Okay, so we're going to go to this Copenhagen Developer Festival, and we're just going to go inspect. And, here's your general little tooltips that we got over here. And we're just going to go into Lighthouse. And we've got a whole bunch of different things that exist in here. The accessibility tools that they have inside of Lighthouse work pretty great. Best practices. Okay. The PWA things are in Lighthouse are fantastic, but we're going to do a performance audit, and we're going to do a performance audit on desktop because we're going to be nicer. And so what this is going to do is basically do just a general load, but while it's going to do the load, it's actually just going to do an audit of how long does it take for all this stuff to happen. The audit's going to take a little bit because it has to do a whole bunch of math as this whole thing is loading and gather up data and gather up screenshots or whatever. And at the end of this, you're going to see a score. And it's exciting to be excited about a score, right? 84% performance. And that's genuinely really pretty good. That's genuinely really pretty good. However, I'm about to do that exact same thing again. And one of the things you're about to learn is that if you do a performance audit, that score will never be the same twice. You will always get some sort of variation in that score, and that's okay. You know sort of where you're going with. You know where you're generally lying, and you can audit, your competitors and go yeah, your performance is pretty crappy. But we've got 73 now, which is, again, still pretty good number. We're definitely not in the red. But one of the things that I feel like is so much more important about the concept of a score is into the idea of what can be improved. And what can be improved, this shouldn't be a surprise. It's all in the image stuff. Going through this, if you look at what is it actually saying that you should do, we can see here that we're essentially serving a bunch of things that could be lossless JPEG, WebP images. Instead, we're actually serving those as pings. And so if we could actually serve those things as pings or as a compressed lossless, I believe this thing is running next, so it's actually recommending, rather than IMG source, recommending using a source set or a picture with different sources, which is also going to make a sort of performance increase. And so it's got these recommendations, and that, way more importantly than the score, is what is cool about this. Because you can say, all right, well, we're doing okay, but crucially, we can actually look at some of these things that I can improve on this page right now. And you can just, as long as you don't need to have it on a public thing, you can be doing this on a browser that you're loading locally, a development site, and you can just look at these things as you're going through and go, oh, okay, well, that could be improved, but that's an ass ache. That could be improved, and I think I can probably do that now. And I think that that's one of the huge wins, just like in accessibility, in performance, is just realizing, yes, I can make incremental change now, and then hopefully I can make incremental change again in the future. One more thing I wanted to leave you with is just a picture. It's a picture that I enjoyed, and I don't know how this is going to resonate with a non-American audience. We're about to find out. Does anyone know who this is? Shout it out if you know. What's that? NASA programmer, you're absolutely correct. Anyone know her name? Ooh, so close. That is actually, oh my God. Sorry, just a white man on stage correcting women, Jesus. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. Yeah, so sorry, that is the legendary Apollo programmer, Margaret Hamilton. And here she is next to her printout of the node modules directory for her first Hello World app. I mean, solid, right? Genuinely good joke. Genuinely good joke. But you can actually get a little bit better. Because Gary Bernhardt actually did the math of this. So what Gary Bernhardt did was try to figure out, well, okay, so if I do like create Hello World, like Hello World create app, and how many letters does that have? And then like, how big is a piece of paper? And then like, how many letters could I probably fit in a piece of paper? What's the margin? This looks like, you know, it's 1960s. They're probably using like a fatter kind of like serif font or whatever. So like, maybe I don't be able to fit that many letters on the page, and kind of like measure this. And there's these folders. So like, I got to like factor in these folders. And so we kept trying to do this math to like take the actual output of Hello World create React app and measure that against this photo. And he came up with the concept that returning to the original photo of Margaret Hamilton next to a printout of her node modules directory, the paper is about as tall as her. Therefore, Margaret Hamilton is almost 18 feet tall. We got here. Like, we got here with our eyes open. We got here intentionally, and we're still here. And if we look at the actual Hello World that we can pull down from Vue, from React, from Angular, Angular is a tiny little bit of a cheat, to be fair, because the Angular is actually going to come with the material, and that's what bloats that to be larger than its competitors. But we've just said, I want to make a new website, and it's going to do something cool, I imagine. And we're going to download 106, 111, or 222 megabytes, and we haven't written a line of code yet. We've done nothing. We haven't made anything. We've just built the framework to start from. And then we've got developers that are scared. They're terrified. I've talked to them. They're fucking scared about the idea that they don't know how to remove fonts from the head because they don't know how the head is. They don't know where the head is, what file calls it. Returning to a metaphor of the doom, if we're looking at Angular create React app, Angular, as a default install, is as big as SimCity 2000, the video game Papers, Please, and Minecraft, and an army of me at 256 kilobytes. All of that together is an Angular Hello World. So what's to be done about this? I mean, very simply, it's write HTML. It's write HTML. You have to do it at some point. No matter what architecture you're working in, and I do not mean if I'm giving you the impression that I'm poo-pooing on any of these frameworks, I'm not. I'm really not, because I use them as well. But I also recognize that, like, no matter what I'm using, HTML is going to end up coming over to the browser. It has to happen at some point. And if I'm not doing it, the computer is. And I'm a developer, so I don't trust computers that much. If you're interested, I have these stickers to give away if you're interested. But seriously, though, write HTML, and while you're doing it, do give a thought to CSS, my love language, because it's also very good. So thank you so much. My name is Lemon. That's my daughter, Simone. And I've got stickers to give you. I've got these lemon stickers. So if you're interested in any of those, I got those for you. I've got the maybe don't need all that JavaScript stickers. If you can prove yourself sane, you can go ahead and get one of these sane stickers. And then my company would also love to give you some Saba stickers if you're interested in them. But please come up and talk to me at any point. Thank you so much.